Book of Proverbs. We're going to be beginning in Proverbs 6 this morning. So glad to see you. So thankful for another occasion to be together. So much appreciate those visiting with us, and hope and pray that that in addition to the eating the supper together and singing together as we have and praying together, that the lesson will be of use to you today. We began a few weeks ago as the year turned, presenting a few lessons from the first part of the book of Proverbs with the intent that all of us might make it our ambition, our goal, to be wiser, if the Lord gives us this year, than we have been in the past. To learn how to be closer to God by following His way, to avoid the heartaches and troubles that sin brings and the consequence that it brings. I can't do anything about the past other than repent. But what I can do is let the Lord help me to be wiser in the future. You know, we have all done things we regret. We've done things we needed to bow our knee and ask God to forgive us for. There's no question about that. None of us are above sin. But surely I don't have to continue to be a lackey for the devil, making the same mistakes over and again. That's my ambition, my goal. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. And I think the book of Proverbs is a practical help. We've talked about a few lessons about how that the Proverbs can give us insight and wisdom and humility. And that the Proverbs deal with everyday life. Ain't it so? You know, in the second chapter, we read this passage the other week. When wisdom enters your heart and knowledge is pleasant to your soul, discretion will preserve you. Understanding will keep you, to deliver you from the way of evil, from the man who speaks perverse things, from those who leave the paths of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil and delight in the perversity of the wicked, whose ways are crooked and who are devious in their paths. Verse 16, to deliver you from the immoral woman, from the seductress who flatters with her words, who forsakes the companion of her youth, forgets the covenant of her God. Her house leads down to death, and her paths to the dead. None who go to her return, nor do they regain the paths of life. So you may walk in the way of godliness, to keep the paths of righteousness. We looked in previous lessons at an example from the very first chapter that deals with gang violence, with covetousness, with people taking moral shortcuts in order to gain, and the dead end that is. And we made the point you can read about that every day on the news. And we began last time by looking at this second section here. Another great temptation that is common to man and is ageless is the temptation to sexual immorality, fornication, mating with somebody that's not your mate, adultery. Not only that, but mating with someone who belongs to another, or maybe you belong to another, or both. And the tragedy that brings and the horror that brings on an individual. We looked at chapter 5 last time we were together. I want to look in a couple of other. It's hard to miss. Just in the first 9 chapters of Proverbs, how many times he warns us about this very practical, dangerous sin. Practical warning. In Proverbs chapter 6, if you have your Bible, I encourage you to read with us as we look at this great old story and gain, I hope, the power from it. My son, he begins in verse 20. You notice, you can't miss it, can you? How many times in the first 9 chapters of Proverbs is that language used? It is as if wisdom itself is calling us to his side and instructing us as a parent. Here, wisdom instructs us to remember the words of our parents. My son, hear thy father's commandment, and forsake not the law of thy mother. Bind them continually about thine heart. Tie them about thy neck. When thou goest, it will lead thee. When thou sleepest, it will keep thee. When thou awakest, it will talk with thee. A couple of things there that we notice. One is that the value of parents who set limits for their children. It's hard to measure that. You know, we need that kind of guidance. All of us can help to contribute to the moral climate, but as parents, we set boundaries for our children. And as young people, let me tell you, when your mother and father give you a curfew, or they give you limits, or they tell you where you can go or who you can go with, they're not trying to be mean to you. They're trying to save you. And so listen. Be wise enough not to resent those things, even if I don't understand why, even if I don't think it's necessary. That's not the point. The point is God placed us as parents in a position to try to warn and to guide our children away from dangers they're not aware of. And we as children need to be wise enough to accept that teaching and to realize, by the way, that decency is never out of fashion, at least not with folks who respect God. Those old rules, yeah, 3,000 years old, but still speaking to us today. I can't help but notice that word, too, continually in the old translation. Bind them continually, verse 21. It occurs to us that the dangers that we're talking about are everywhere. They are at work. They are at school. They are in the neighborhood. They're at church. That passage in 1 Timothy chapter 5 comes to mind. You know, here Paul is writing to Timothy, a great fellow, but not above warning, not above being taught, not above being corrected. And in 1 Timothy 5, Paul begins, we divide the book that way, but anyway, in this section of the letter, he begins, rebuke not an elder, but entreat him as a father, the younger men as brethren. Verse 2, the elder women as mothers, and the younger women as sisters, with all purity. That warning says something. It says that you can't let your guard down anywhere. That sin is looking to kill you. And that in dealing even with your brethren, even those you share Christ with, that there always has to be that standard of purity. Good lesson. It was a lesson taught a long time ago. Here's a fella, he's a sincere guy. He may devote his life to preaching and teaching and spreading the gospel of Christ. But he needs to know you don't need to go over to some sister's house when her husband's not home and you by yourself. Don't do that. The story bears that out in the next chapter. You've got to set limits about the things that are said and the setting that you are involved in. It is a continual fight. And I like, too, this word here when he says that the law of God is a light, verse 23. The commandment is a lamp. We find a world that doesn't believe that, of course. They think that it's all a bunch of old-fashioned nonsense. Why does God warn us about the sin of fornication? What's wrong with love, the world would say. They don't know what love is. That's an abuse of the word love. It goes back to that passage in Deuteronomy 6 that we've read many times. I know you've read it. It's a good, if you like to underline in your Bible, this is a good one to underline. This is Moses explaining here in these last sermons before he would leave the scene and Israel would go into Canaan. He said, I want you to remember all these things, but this is one thing I want you to remember. Deuteronomy 6:24, the Lord commanded us to do all these statutes to fear the Lord our God for our good always. In reference to our subject, you will find people who will tell you and who believe that the old archaic rules about sexuality being bounded within a lawful marriage and that that fornication is something terrible. Why would God bind us that way? He's just trying to keep us from having fun. He's just trying to keep us from enjoying ourselves. No, that's not the reason why. You'll find people in the world who say and believe that actually if you just go shack up with somebody, they'll call it trial marriage, or not a marriage, is it? But whatever they say, well, you just go shack up with somebody, and that way you can find out if you're compatible, and that'll cut down on the divorce rate. No, it doesn't. People in the world will tell you that couples who live together before they marry are more likely to divorce for a variety of reasons. It's just something I need to get in my mind. The world will lie to us and say to us God's rules are bad, they're hurtful. Where have we heard that before? How about Genesis 3? From the beginning, God's trying to hurt you by telling you not to. But we know better. We know better. God, help us to remember better and to act like we know better. Let me continue here in chapter 6 of our passage, our text. Look in verse 24. All this warning is, Solomon writes, to keep thee from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman. Lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids. For by means of a whorish woman a man is brought to a piece of bread, and the adulteress will hunt for the precious life. I do think sometimes people can fall into sexual sin. It doesn't make it good. It's still sin. But we also understand that there are hunters out there. And there's nothing unintentional about what they do. I remember growing up, there was a man well respected in the community, worked in a position of some attention. And again, I'm a young guy, teenager, and I'm not into gossip. But it so happened I wound up working for him in the summers. Anyway, the story went that he had a new wife. He had an old wife too, that he had his children with. But when you have a bunch of little children running around, sometimes you're tired, and sometimes you have, certain things that drain your energy and time. But when he was wanted to go play tennis at lunch, his secretary was always more than ready to go with him. And she always looked nice, and she always was interested. And the idea was that wasn't unintentional, that she had set her sights on that fella, and she got him. Whatever she got. That story's played out every day, over and over again. And it's not always women. They're young men who seek to take the purity of a young woman, and they set their eyes on her, and they do. So sometimes it's very intentional. There's evil in the world. That's the case he's talking about here. A woman who's looking to take down an individual. And the truth is that in situations like that, statistically, she'll do it just about every time. Not every time. We can say no. We can do right. But there are a lot more that fall, maybe, than say no. Because they're not bolstered by what God would have them to be bolstered with. But the cost of it is enormous. Let me go back to chapter 6 and look at verse 27. He says, can a man take fire into his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Can one go upon hot coals and his feet not be burned? So is he that goes to his neighbor's wife. Whoever touches her shall not be innocent. Men do not despise a thief. Despise a thief. Nobody appreciates a thief. But men don't despise a thief if he steal to satisfy his soul when he's hungry. If he be found, he shall restore sevenfold. He shall give all the substance of his house. But whoever commits adultery with a woman lacks understanding. He that doeth it destroys his own soul. A wound and dishonor shall he get, and his reproach shall not be wiped away. For jealousy is the rage of a man. Therefore he will not spare in the day of vengeance. He will not regard any ransom, neither will he rest content, though thou givest many gifts. It's a powerful passage that talks about reaping what you sow and about giving up so much to gain something that's not worth having. And it's just so powerful. A wound and dishonor will he get. He will not spare in the day of vengeance. This is a case of adultery. It's the case of a man who's not stealing bread, he's stealing somebody's wife. And what consequence comes with that? He will not regard any ransom. Jealousy is the rage of a man. I've told this story before, maybe to some of you. I'll tell it again. I don't enjoy telling it, but I can't help but think about it every time I read this passage. There's a grave. And if you look at the marker, simple marker, it's got the man's name, it's got the date he was born, it's got the day he died. And then underneath, like they'll do sometimes, just one simple little line, it says, beloved brother. And if you didn't know the story, you would think, well, this man must have been a bachelor, you know. No, he wasn't a bachelor. He had been married. In fact, he had more than one wife he had had. Didn't have any children, I guess. No, he had children. They were young. He had children. But he was buried by his brother. And if you know the backstory, you know why. You know what happened there. He had been married, and then he got another wife, and then he didn't want that wife anymore. He wanted somebody else's wife. And while he was with her, her husband rolled up on them while they were sitting in a car in a public place. And he got out of his car, and as the man got out of the car, he pulled out a pistol, and he emptied it in the man, and he died right there on the pavement. He wasn't buried by any of his wives or by his young children. He was buried by his brother. That's not a once upon a time story. That happens on and on and on again. 3,000 years ago, Solomon said, let me tell you, son, you're opening up a can you don't want. Rage, jealousy, all of the consequences that may come upon us because of the decisions that we make. What does he say? A man that commits adultery, who goes down that road, destroys his own soul. He lacks judgment. He lacks sense. He's not using his mind. Chapter 7 just continues the thought. It's a different shift, but the same lesson, I think, taught in specific case. My son, chapter 7 begins, my son, keep my words, lay up my commandments with thee. Keep my commandments and live. And my law is the apple of thine eye. Bind them upon thy fingers. Write them upon the table of thine heart. Say to wisdom, thou art my sister, and call understanding thy kinswoman. You say, don't forget what I'm telling you, please. Because it'll be easy to forget in some situations. That they may keep thee, verse 5, from the strange woman, from the stranger which flatters with her words. It'll be hard to remember what you know is right when that flattery begins. Oh, she's a talker. And she can tell you all kind of things that you want to hear. Oh, my husband, he doesn't understand me like you do. Oh, he's not good to me like you are. Oh, or it could be a man sweet-talking a woman, saying the same kind of lies, the same kind of things. And we'll believe it. And then we'll begin to forget what we know and begin to contemplate doing things we'd never dreamed we would do. It's an old story. And Solomon pictures that going on. He said, I can look out my window here, verse 6, through my casement, and I beheld among the simple ones. Doesn't mean he's unintelligent, but he's naive. And he's not wise. I discerned among the youths a young man void of understanding, not careful, ripe for the picking, passing through the street near her corner. And he went the way to her house in the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark night. Been said a lot of times, it was a dark night for him. I don't care what the weather was. But on this dark night, he's heading toward her house. I take it he intends to go there. He doesn't have any business going to the house of some woman, much less a married woman, alone, at night of all things. What did he think was going to happen? What did he think was going to be the end of this? What kind of lies do I tell myself? Oh, I'm just going to go talk to her. I just need to sit down and visit with her. We're void of understanding. We're not wise. And the devil has replaced desire, lust, illicit desire for what should be wisdom. You know, I can't stress enough, I think the wise man stressed this enough. There's some situations you don't need to put yourself in. That's what he's telling me. There's some places you don't need to be. I just noticed here, Gable does such a good job with the bulletin, and on the back of the bulletin there's an article by Gilbert Alexander. Some of you guys know Gilbert Alexander, on the prom. And he makes the point here in this short article, the prom is a formal dance during which the young men and women embrace one another closely and move to rhythmic music. To deny its overt sexual nature is folly. Young women are often dressed in formal attire that accentuates their sexual desirability, and naive mothers who delight to see this. And what does he starts off with our passage in 6:27. Can a man take fire into his bosom and his clothes not be burned? I believe he's right about that. I don't think everybody that goes to those has a bad motive. I think in many cases they are the unwise. And maybe sexual sin doesn't come out of it, maybe. But I'll tell you, lust can come out of it. And the wrong direction can come out of it. It certainly doesn't help me get closer to God, does it? Does it help me be pure? I tell you, two young people out by themselves, parked up some lonely road at night, that's not going to promote holy thought. That there's some situations, we've got to be wise enough to understand we don't have any bad motives, we're not trying to get into trouble. But some situations invite trouble. And we've got to stay away from that. That's what he's telling us. You can't take fire into your bosom and your clothes not be burned to some extent or another. It's not going to help me be pure. Obviously. And who is this woman after all? Well, what we know about her, Solomon tells us. And she's no prize to somebody spiritual. Verse 10, and behold, there met him a woman with the attire of a harlot, subtle of heart, loud and stubborn. Her feet abide not in her house. Now she is without, now in the streets. She lies in wait at every corner. That great passage in Proverbs 31 asks the question, who can find a virtuous woman? The question's been asked. I wonder who's looking for one. You got to look for one first. It's easy to be attracted by the mere physical. Attraction is a part of the I understand that. God placed the attraction there. But to find a woman, to find a young man who has a sense of modesty and propriety, that's what I want for you. I want you to find a young person who has high moral standards, who has a strong sense of decency. Hear me. I don't care what kind of car he's got. That's not a trade that you want to make. Find somebody, find a young woman who has that godliness that shows in everything she does, the way she talks, the way she dresses, the way she carries herself. This woman is selling something else, and her appeal is on a different level. It's a married woman. And so when he gets to her house, before he gets to her house, she finds him. And look at verse 13. She caught him and kissed him. And with an impudent face, shameless face, she said to him, I have my peace offerings, and I have paid my vows. Therefore I came to meet thee diligently to seek thy face. I have found thee. She caught him and she kissed him. She's bold, unrestrained. And it's chapter 30, Proverbs 30 and verse 20, I think it is. These are the words of Agur, who wrote, "Such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eats and wipes her mouth and says, I have done no wickedness." Shameless, shameless. So, when you are attracted to folks like that, you are begging for trouble. And in this case, this young man has already run through several stop signs, and it's going to get worse because her shamelessness knows no bounds. Not only does she kiss him, she propositions him, as we'd say. Where am I at now? Verse 17. "I have perfumed my bed with myrrh and aloes and cinnamon." She's inviting him to her bed. "Come, let us take our fill of love until the morning. Let us solace ourselves with loves. For the good man is not home." Talk about her husband. "Is not home. He's gone on a long journey. He's taken a bag of money with him. He won't be back till it's all spent." What's she saying there? Well, she's just making this terrible thing sound great. You know, my husband, he won't find out. Nobody will find out. I paid my peace offerings today. She divorces morality and religion as if paying her vows and eating the peace offering will undo the wickedness that she's proposing. You know, that's something that's not uncommon. People have that spirit. God forbid. I've known preachers who get up and preach sermons, and then Sunday night they'll be sleeping with somebody else's wife. You just can't imagine. All the ugliness in the world, as the old fellow said, is in the church to one extent or another. I hope not to the same amount. But people, we can lie to ourselves. We can fool ourselves. So, you know, here's the thing that you know and I know. When somebody tells themselves, or they tell you, nobody will know. It's an evil thing. Nobody will know. You know. They know. God knows always. And likely everybody else is going to know. Just give it a little time. Don't let the devil fool us that way. But fooled him. Verse 21. "With her much fair speech she caused him to yield. And with the flattering of her lips she forced him." It's always been a sort of an interesting picture. In this particular case, you have the married woman, the adulteress, tempting this young man, foolish man. She forced him. What do you think she did? You think she grabbed him in a headlock and pulled him down? You pull old wrestling? No, I don't believe that. That's not. She did that by her flattery. She maneuvered him and manipulated him, and he's bought it all and just followed her down. That's what he says. Look in verse 22. "And he goeth after her straightway, as an ox goes to the slaughter, as a fool to the correction stock, till a dart strike through his liver, as a bird hasteneth to the snare, and knows not that it's for his life." You know, you have livestock. Maybe you have a steer, an ox, and it's slaughter day. Going to take him up, put a rope around his neck, put him on the truck, take him down to the butcher, or the slaughterhouse anyway. Well, I mean, he's been around a little while. He's had people put a rope around his neck, lead him here and there. He doesn't realize it's his last trip. Like a fool to the correction stop, like an ox to the slaughter. So the wise man grabs him by the collar and he says, "Don't make this mistake." We can be forgiven, but so much better to say no to sin and no to the regrets that this young man will have. Maybe even the losing of his life. So he says in verse 24, "Hearken unto me therefore, ye children, and attend to my words of my mouth. Let not thine heart decline to her ways. Go not astray in her paths. For she hath cast down many wounded, yea, many strong men have been slain by her." When you read that, don't you think about Paul's warning to Timothy? Flee also youthful lust. You think Timothy was a weak man? I don't. I don't believe you do either. But he needed that warning. I need that warning. We need that warning. Her house, he continues, is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death. So, with that warning ringing in our ears, let's finish out this section by looking at Proverbs chapter 9. I want to read here let me start in verse 13. 9:13 continues this. How many times has he warned us about this in the first 9 chapters? The same warning. A foolish woman is clamorous, full of words, turbulent passion, as one fellow said. She's simple and knows nothing. She's deceived too. Deceiving and deceived. She sits at the door of her house on a seat in the high places of the city to call passengers who go right on their ways. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. And as for him that wanteth understanding, she says to him, stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he knows not that the dead are there, and that her guests are in the depths of hell. The devil will always sell you. He's a great salesman. He makes evil seem so good. The shortcuts seem so necessary. So sitting here today, let me make a resolve and ask God's help that whatever the devil has planned to throw in my way today, tomorrow, if I live 10 years from now, I will make the right choice. Whatever mistakes I've made, God forgive me, but I will make the right choice when the devil comes knocking on my door again. And he will, and he will. Let me read the first few verses of this chapter and then we'll close. This is a great summary. Wisdom has been pleading with us like a parent talking to us as his children. Wisdom hath builded her house. She hath hewn out her 7 pillars. There's a strong house. She hath killed her beasts. She has mingled her wine. She has furnished her table. She hath sent forth her maidens. All things are ready. Come to the feast. Let wisdom teach you. Let wisdom strengthen you. She cries upon the highest places of the city, hard to miss. In a prominent place, she calls to us. Verse 5, come eat of my bread and drink of the wine which I have mingled. Forsake the foolish and live, and go in the way of understanding. A lesson like this is not intended to discourage us about the past. It's an encouragement for me and for you and for everybody else to think about where we are and where we need to be and how the devil is going to. He will not leave us alone as long as this world stands. He will continue to try to get us off the path. Hold to wisdom. Don't listen to this world, because this world lies. And the place where it goes is the place of the dead, spiritually dead, as well as sometimes the physically dead. God help us to hear and accept the invitation of wisdom. The Bible is wisdom, but Proverbs is a concentration of practical wisdom. And I think if I make that commitment, reading the Proverbs will be one thing. That will help me to be better if God gives me this year, to make better decisions, to have less regrets, to be more of an encouragement to the right way. And I appreciate your kind attention to this simple exhortation. We're going to sing a song. Brother Bradley selected, I Am Resolved. That's a strong word, resolved. It suggests the idea not just of a wish or a maybe, but an intention, a serious intention. I am resolved no longer to linger, charmed by the world's delight. Things that are higher and nobler these have allured my sight. I don't know if he knew what I was talking about today, but that's a pretty good summary of it. God help me. God help all of us. If you're here today and there's some matter you need to correct publicly, do so today. We rejoice with you. The Lord would rejoice with you. If you're here as one who has never obeyed the gospel, it'd be a great time to do that. Make your resolve to serve God. We can only do that as His children, to be baptized into Christ. Maybe we're here, we just need the prayers of the saints in some matter. Whatever it might be, if we can help you, let us know even right now while we stand, while we sing.